The ad image is clean and cool, a sparkling mountain lake with a pack of cigarettes pointed straight at you. This is just one example of an advertisement for cigarettes trying to convince you that smoking is fashionable and socially acceptable. Tobacco companies spend millions of dollars every year advertising brands of cigarettes. Some are aimed at specific audiences, using attractive, appealing brand images. For example, Virginia Slims, using the campaign theme of "You've come a long way, baby," has become one of the most successful cigarettes marketed today. According to Smoking Digest, Americans smoked 620 billion cigarettes in 1976, spending over $14 billion, almost $259 per smoker. But since the price of a package of cigarettes has increased over the years, up to $1 in some cases, that amount is even more now. Why do people begin smoking? Various reasons, mostly due to peer pressure or because it looks cool. But smoking is a habit that most people, once they begin, find hard to break. Warnings against smoking are everywhere. The Lung Association, the American Cancer Society, and doctors all say that smoking may be hazardous. Cigarette packages themselves all have warnings to that effect. But do people listen and stop? Sometimes. However, in some cases, it's too late when the smoker realizes just what smoking all those packs of cigarettes for years has been doing to their lungs and heart.
People that smoke that much, 50 years old, 50 pack years by history, and if they have an abnormality on their chest x-ray, a nodule on their chest x-ray that's new, that's a 50-50 chance of being cancer. That's no ifs, ands, or buts. That's well accepted.
In this series, we'll take a look at smokers who are trying to stop. We'll discuss the health hazards linked to smoking, including dangers for pregnant women and ways to stop smoking. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News. Anywhere you go, you see people smoking. Young, old, men, women, teenagers, and they seem to be enjoying what they're doing. Even with all the warnings against smoking, people continue to light up, some smoking up to 3 packs a day.
It's a habit.
Have you ever tried to stop?
Oh, yes.
What happened?
Couldn't.
You enjoy smoking?
Yeah, I've tried, but I don't want to quit.
You don't want to quit?
No, I don't see no reason to quit.
You don't think it's bad for you?
I think it's bad, but I enjoy smoking.
You probably heard all the warnings from doctors, Cancer Society telling you that, oh, cigarettes are bad for you. What do you think when you hear that?
Well, I agree with them, but it's my life.
Most of the excuses are common, but that's what they are, excuses. If you really want to quit, you can.
I smoked an average of 2 packs of cigarettes a day or better for some 25 years. Well, excuse me, 45 years.
And you believe that smoking was a direct link to your heart attack then?
I'm sure it was a major factor. It wasn't the only one.
How did you stop? Did you use any special gimmicks, methods?
I tell you, when you hear those angel feathers fluttering around you, you can stop.
Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
As you go in.
Saying that smoking cigarettes is harmful and really believing it are two different things. Some doctors say the only way to make a smoker realize what's happening to his body is to use scare tactics or just present the facts.
You see the difference? There's nothing on this side, but this is a white shadow here. This is a cancer. And this man has died now of his cancer of the lung. He was a very heavy cigarette smoker, consuming 2 to 3 packs a day for over 20 years. We think that if somebody has smoked for 15 years over a pack a day, the incidence of lung cancer will be 15 times what it would be without smoking.
What does smoking, a cigarette or a cigar or whatever, what does the smoke do to your lungs?
Well, it works as an irritant, and of course it deposits the nicotine and the tar in your conducting airways. And if you think of your lungs and your airways as you would an oak tree with the branches going off and stuff, on the inside of those it deposits that, and it works as an irritant. It creates mucus, which blocks off the airways.
A way to find out if smoking is causing obstructions in your lungs is to take the pulmonary suction test. The test measures airflow.
Deep breath. Push! Strain all the way. Push it out, push it out, push it out. Now, he's a heavy cigarette smoker.
Yeah.
If he didn't smoke, his curve would probably come up like this. But the fact that he smokes and his air is restricted when he blows it out. This is the initial effort to blow out, and then you can see the air is trapped as the volume of air goes out.
And that's what smoking does. It clogs up your lungs and you can't
Right, you can't get the air out.
All doctors agree smoking is bad for you. You may not realize the effects immediately, but 15 to 20 years from now, you may wish you'd heeded all those warnings. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News. Do you think it's harmful to you and to your baby?
Well, I've heard, different things about it, but I think it could cause premature, and it could cause the baby to weigh less, but there's other things that could cause that besides smoking. It's not just smoking that's going to cause your baby to be small.
So you're going to try and cut down at least?
Right. I've already cut down a good bit, more than I would have if I hadn't been pregnant.
Do you think now you'll just stop smoking altogether?
I doubt it. When the baby comes, I'll probably smoke more than ever.
Is there any evidence that is conclusive that smoking is definitely bad for pregnant women?
Sure, there's really, really good evidence now that smoking can really hurt, and in a lot of different ways. I think first it's really clear that women who smoke, their babies are going to be about a half a pound less in weight than babies of women who don't smoke. And most of the problems that we see are, stem from babies being born that are too small. So there's no question, first of all, that women who smoke are much more likely to have a miscarriage. They're more likely to have a baby that dies before the baby is born or stillbirth. And they're more likely to have babies that die within the first year of life.
Dr. Goldenberg says as far as he knows, quitting cold turkey isn't harmful. He says the quicker a woman can stop smoking, the better, especially since smoking is most harmful during the second half of pregnancy.
The baby is more likely to have some sort of neurological damage at ages 5, 6, and 7. So these babies will have a greater incidence of learning disorders, a higher incidence of mental retardation, problems like that.
Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News. Cold turkey is probably the most common way to stop smoking, but it doesn't work for everyone. So the American Cancer Society, the Lung Association, and other agencies have come up with other methods to help you kick the habit. First, list all the reasons you smoke. Then bet a friend that you can stop. Switch to a different brand. Smoke only half of your cigarette. And smoke only under unpleasant circumstances.
I try to tell them to substitute something else for it. Take up a new hobby, exercise, drink a lot of fluids, eat non-fattening foods. One of my tricks is to cut carrots and celery sticks and peppermint sticks, and they always have them with them so they can substitute for them.
One way that has been very successful in helping smokers stop is the 20-day stop smoking program developed by the Lung Association.
It's kind of a work manual. For instance, one of the first things that the manual will guide them in doing is to evaluate themselves and answer the question, why do I smoke? And then from that it will guide them to discover the triggers that desire for smoking.
There are a lot of different ways to stop smoking. No one way is any better than the other. The best is whatever works for you. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
Narvi Lee Martin first started delivering babies in the 1930s. Back then, she says many times she'd be taken to the expectant mother by her husband in a horse and buggy. Through the years, some things have changed. Now when it's time for the baby to be born, in most cases, Mrs. Martin gets a phone call. But other than that, she says there aren't many changes.
The cord used to be different ways of tying the cord. And since they have changed from that, they changed to the clamps like they use in the hospital, the little white bone clamp. And that's one change they made. And other than that, they're typing the blood. We didn't have to get the blood typed for the baby. Those are the only two just real changes we've recently had.
To keep up with current medical techniques, Mrs. Martin and the other 3 granny midwives in this county attend monthly training and proficiency sessions at the Public Health Department. The expectant mother gets medical attention from the doctor and nurses on staff first. Then if the woman is a low-risk patient and wants to have her baby at home, she's referred to one of the 4 granny midwives, whose only job then is to deliver the baby. Mrs. Martin says she has delivered as many as 100 babies in a single year. Now all that has changed. In 1976, then Governor George Wallace signed a bill into law making nurse midwifery legal in Alabama. The Attorney General at that time interpreted the law to mean that no new certificates be given to traditional granny midwives, and the state began phasing out the granny midwife program as the licensed ones retired. Even though Mrs. Martin is 74 years old and hasn't delivered a baby since last December, she says she'll keep doing her job until the state says she has to retire. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News. Unlike granny midwives, nurse midwives have more direct contact with the patient. The nurse midwives are specially trained registered nurses who give prenatal care, deliver the baby in the hospital, and take care of mother and baby for several weeks after birth. The nurse midwife may also give a local anesthetic and make an incision to enlarge the birth area. Since nurse midwifery was legalized in 1976, state health officials have discontinued the practice of giving licenses to granny midwives, and the nurse midwives seem to be taking over the granny midwives' patients. But Sister Mary Kay Tyrrell says this isn't why nurse midwifery was legalized.
We didn't really come here to replace the lay midwives. We came here to kind of take care of some of these mothers who would have gone to the emergency room, and we tried to do that by taking 15 mothers a month from the health department and giving them prenatal care here and making arrangements for a hospital delivery, hopefully cutting down on the number of what we call walk-in deliveries.
Like granny midwives, nurse midwives work only with low-risk patients, and the woman's physician must have okayed it. Sister Mary Kay says one special advantage to a nurse midwife delivery is that the baby's born in a hospital with all the emergency medical equipment close by in case she needs it. And if there are complications, a physician can be brought in. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News. More and more women and their husbands are attending classes like this one so they can learn how to care for the baby after it's born and how to go through labor and delivery with minimum anesthesia. Both husband and wife learn the latest techniques in breathing and relaxation so the woman can help her doctor or midwife during the delivery. Most babies are born in a delivery room like this one. The physician and nurses who attend the birth have all the medical equipment at their disposal that they might need. But some expectant mothers don't like this room because they'd rather have their babies in a traditional at-home atmosphere. Tomorrow night, I'll look at the hospital alternative to the delivery room. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News. Jennifer and Bill Nolan decided to have their baby delivered by nurse midwife Sister Mary Kay in St. Margaret's birthing room, and it looks a little like a bedroom in a home. Jennifer relives her experience in the birthing room as our camera takes her place in this recreation.
We had the first child in the traditional delivery room, so with our second child we chose the birth room. We desired the personal attention and the privacy of the birth room, and with the support of my husband and the comforting and gentling effect of Sister Mary Kay, we could experience labor according to our lifestyle. We had the liberty to listen to the music that we enjoy, talk without being inhibited, and we could pray together. I feel that the privacy in the birth room encourages women to move around more during early and active stages of labor and not just lie there. In the birth room, we didn't have the confusion or discomfort of moving from the labor room to the delivery room at the end of transition, and we were able to have the benefit of bonding with our new baby. And we were able to do this in a cozy bed instead of on a stainless steel table. We were together for an hour after she came, holding and cuddling and letting her nurse. And in contrast to the traditional sick room, operating room environment, the atmosphere in the birth room can be reassuring to the prepared mother because there's the confidence that medical technology is right there, but it's in such a pleasant package.
Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
Alabama's prison system now holds thousands of people who were convicted of breaking the law. But there are other convicted felons who are serving their sentences on probation or parole. At least 2/3 of those who are convicted end up on probation or parole. Alabama now has 15,000 under the supervision of the Pardons and Parole Board. That 15,000 are supervised by 104 parole officers throughout the state. Our investigation found that the probation officers have so many cases and are so busy on other investigations that the thousands of people on probation and parole receive little or no supervision and no surveillance. In gathering information for this report, we spent time with parole officers John Sanders, Clarence Cook, Truman Bass, Don Parker, Glenn Melton, and Lou Garth. We talked with parole official David Williams. We also talked with a convict who is serving his 4th prison term and is getting ready to go out on parole. This is Fred Shooks, Chief Parole Officer in Montgomery.
Our biggest problem is that we conduct so many investigations. It's getting larger all the time, the amount of investigations that we conduct, that we don't have as much time to supervise our caseloads as we have in the past.
And there's no way that it can be with the staff that we have available to do it. We have in this office a caseload of approximately 150 clients per officer, which is in contrast to the 35 recommended by the National Council on Crime and Delinquency.
We found that the parole officers, while trying to supervise a double and sometimes triple caseload of parolees, have to conduct at least 30 pre-sentencing investigations every month for the court systems, leaving potentially dangerous convicted offenders free to commit other crimes. In our next report, a look at how little supervision Alabama's parolees receive and how that may be contributing to the high rate of burglaries and other crimes in Alabama. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News at Kilby Prison. When a man leaves here on parole, he's still on shaky ground. He's being given another chance to try and live by the rules that govern everybody else. His parole officer is that slim thread which holds a convict accountable for his actions. But our investigation uncovered a serious problem that keeps the parole officer from performing the important duty of monitoring the parolee. We found that parole officers are so tied up to other work, they are forced to neglect what many considers to be the most important duty they have, supervision and surveillance.
What is, in your opinion, is the most serious problem that you encounter as a parole and probation officer?
Probably finding enough time to keep tabs on the people I've got without having to use all the time investigating new applicants.
5% of my time is devoted to the 107 people I have on active supervision. About 95% of my time is spent on paperwork, doing pre-sentence investigations and other investigations for the judges and the Pardon and Parole Board.
The lack of time to supervise and to see and talk with the parolees could result in the parolees committing other crimes while on parole. Parole officer Glenn Melton says his office is usually the last to know when a parolee has committed another crime.
Contacted by someone, usually the police, sometimes a family member, but usually the police. And of course, you talk about crisis intervention, a lot of times the crisis has already happened by the time we intervene. All we're doing then is making a report.
In our next report, we examine the problem of criminals being paroled even when it is clear they cannot be rehabilitated. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News reporting. Alabama law says every inmate has a right to a parole hearing, and hundreds of those are held here at the State Pardons and Parole Board each year. Among the main considerations for parole are the length of sentence, the nature of the crime, and whether an inmate has a high potential for future violence. State Pardons and Parole Director David Williams.
There are no lost persons in the sense that everyone must be considered at some point. The question really becomes, at what point should this person be considered, and then at that point in time, whether or not he's reached the point where he can be safely released.
What impact has the overcrowding of the prison system and court suits had on the Pardon and Parole Board?
Well, the impact of the overcrowded prison situation has caused the board to accelerate to some extent its review of cases and to look more carefully at the persons who are coming before the board to determine who should be released. We have, for instance, in the last 6 months, surveyed county sheriffs and jail wardens to determine those prisoners that they felt could be safely released and would recommend to us.
The inmate must have a job and a place to live before parole is granted. We found situations where rules are apparently ignored and discovered that some inmates have been released without a job and an acceptable place to live. Some probation officers say they have been ordered to approve paroles of criminals who, in their opinion, will commit violent crimes again.
They interview a man in the penitentiary and he gives them a proposed home and job situation. We are to investigate that and determine whether or not it is satisfactory or unsatisfactory. In other words, if he has a job and a residence, that would be a satisfactory program. I have labeled some unsatisfactory, and the man shows up in my office the next Monday morning.
In our next report, we examine 3 cases of men who parole officers say are too dangerous to be on the streets. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News at the State Pardon and Parole Board. This is the formula used by the Pardon and Parole Board when considering a parole. Someone sentenced to a year could qualify for parole in 4 months. On a 5-year prison term, a parole can be granted after serving 12 to 20 months. A 10-year prison term may be cut short by parole after 2 years to 40 months. And a 30-year prison sentence, a parole hearing is possible in 5 years. There are maximum terms before parole consideration for inmates found to indicate a high potential for future violence. We found that the formula being used by the parole board is coupled with disregard of local parole officers' reports. It has allowed some dangerous people to be paroled before they are ready. These are examples. Paroled, a white male aged 27, convicted in Montgomery in 1976 for rape and assault. He received 20 years. Parole came through in 1980. Parole records show that during the rape, the man choked the victims and threatened to blow her brains out. The convict is also known to have a severe drug problem. Paroled, black male, age 45, after 6 felony convictions, and while serving 60 years, he was paroled after serving 8 years on that 60-year sentence. He was arrested several weeks ago and found to have a pistol. The convict is charged with violating a parole in connection with the weapon. He also had a large sum of cash on him when arrested, but was not known to have a job. Another case described by parole officers as a perfect example of system gone wrong is the case of 22-year-old Joe Russell Hobby. Hobby was convicted in 1974 for robbery. He was paroled in 1977 from a 10-year sentence. His parole was revoked 3 days after his release when he walked into a local Montgomery drugstore and robbed the pharmacist of narcotics. Parole sources say Hobby is now being considered for parole, and an unsatisfactory report has been turned into the parole board. Pardon and parole official David Williams.
There is always, as you say, the danger of that. The way to avoid that is to have a parole board that is conscientious and dedicated to public safety as well as relieving the overcrowded situation in prisons, and we have that in this state. Our board looks very carefully at the cases, screens them to their best ability.
Even though parole board officials do their best, it's a fact that there are many, maybe hundreds of parolees in our communities who are planning the crimes of murder, rape, and robbery at any moment. And the parole system is virtually helpless to do its duty of monitoring and arresting those violating paroles early enough to prevent many of those crimes from occurring. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News reporting. This man is going out on parole after his 4th term in prison. It is his 2nd time on parole. He says the last time he was on parole, the parole officer didn't have time to see him as much as he needed to see the officer. Were you motivated by your parole officer?
No.
Why would you say no?
Because, well, I would go down there sometimes, right? And he don't even be there. Oh, it happened several times, maybe 3 or 4 times, And I only got a chance to talk to his secretary, you know. And I think that's unjust to a guy that's on parole and trying to make it, you know. That's the way I feel. I feel that if I could have got a chance to sit down and talk to him like you and I are talking now, you know, it'd have been a whole lot different, you know.
How much money would you have to do an adequate job?
I guess an administrator is never satisfied with the amount of money he has. We are asking for help from the administration this year to add some 15 additional parole officers this year. We need approximately $600,000 this fiscal year for that purpose. The administration is aware of this need, they're aware of the problem, and they have given us assurances that they are going to help us.
As it stands now, the solution to the understaffing problem at pardon and parole is in the hands of the Alabama State Legislature, which has the task of finding the money needed to hire more probation officers. Until that happens, the streets of Alabama's towns and cities will have many poorly supervised convicted criminals on parole who are almost on their own to either go straight or commit another crime. That's the sad but true picture of this state's pardon and parole system. Perhaps the most frightening fact we discovered in this investigation into the state's parole system is that those on parole know that the parole and probation authorities are just too busy to keep up with them all the time. And this could be the main cause of the large numbers of new crimes committed by persons on parole and probation. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News at the State Pardon and Parole Board. Okay.
That Mr. Resto can answer, specifics, but I'd ask that you not ask him to give opinions about what the refugees are fast enough on their case. I think that was what they were saying, as I recall. And so that I would say yes, that with the food strike as such, or refusing to eat food, would be an indication that they were getting. You never know who we have in this country that might be watching or pick up on it, but many of these people do have.
Mrs. McDaniel arrived early for her sentencing in a courtroom packed by family members, friends, and the media. Her lawyer, former Attorney General Bill Baxley, told the court that some statements in Mrs. McDaniel's probation record about her involvement with James Mayberry were erroneous. As an example, Baxley says Mrs. McDaniel did not initially approach the South Central Bell executive, as the report states, nor did Mayberry deliver money on 2 different occasions. District Attorney Jimmy Evans replied he's not apologizing for the report's contents. He says that's what the state would attempt to prove in a trial. Evans had recommended a prison sentence of 26 months for Mrs. McDaniel. Baxley pleaded for probation for his client. He says he fears Mrs. McDaniel will be killed in prison because she's a public figure. Baxley cited the alleged threats against former State Treasurer Melba Till Allen by Tutwiler prison inmates. Also, a Catholic priest offered the alternative of taking custody of Mrs. McDaniel at Resurrection Center, where she would work with spastic children. Although there was a reference by Attorney Baxley to an apparent mix-up concerning a plea bargain, Mrs. McDaniel didn't question her 7-month prison sentence.
I think the judge was as lenient as he could possibly be, but naturally I'm disappointed. But as I have said here before, there'll be some good that comes out of it, and perhaps I can help someone else.
Are you going to do anything else about those misstated facts on your probation report?
I think that was tragic, uncalled for, and unnecessary, but sometimes you have to bear those things.
You feel somebody was out to get you? Do you feel like the...
Oh, was somebody out to get me? My dear, somebody has been out to get me ever since I've been in public office. This is just, they finally made it.
Do you have any names?
They will come later.
Mrs. McDaniel's attorney says she won't appeal today's sentence. Judge Gordon told Mrs. McDaniel she won't have to start serving her prison sentence until March 6th. At the county courthouse, Jane Matheson, WSFA TV News.
The fireworks began when board member Dr. Leon Fraser moved to rescind the board's February 5th decision to lay off 144 employees in an effort to balance the budget. As discussion on the motion began, Governor James jumped to his feet and declared the meeting a setup, and he told the board he wanted definite information on specific areas to be cut back. He suggested cutting back at the administrative level rather than in the field.
You folks that are interested in services, in cuts, I share your same interest. We're asking that each and every department be looked at. That information has not been made available to me to look at. I'd like it by sundown, Rex.
Dr. Rex Rayner, an assistant to the governor, reiterated James' concern that cuts be made and made soon.
Do you really want to go ahead and see the department continue to operate on a deficit basis such that at the end of the fiscal year, before the fiscal year, they're not going to run out of money? I mean, this is the thing. There's got to be a reduction in cost somewhere.
After the governor walked out, the board approved the motion to rescind the layoffs completely. Then Commissioner Cooper was told to find other means of meeting the budget, including, as a last resort, cutting back working hours across the board by 5%. The board also voted to provide the governor's office with a list of their decisions and later passed other motions dealing with proposed money-saving ideas. The board meets again March 20th, and Commissioner Cooper says by then his department will likely be deep into deficit spending. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
He get here walking outside the bus. He always likes to be on TV.
The AUM team carries a perfect 12-0 dual record into this weekend's tournament. These 9 freshmen, sophomores, and juniors have gelled into one of the finest teams in the country, despite this being only their first year together. AUM has caught the eye of the pollsters. The National Bowling Council has the Senators ranked 2nd in the nation behind San Jose State, a team they defeated earlier this year. As you might expect, the AUM bowlers are elated over their lofty ranking.
Winning the Las Vegas tournament, and of course we won in Savannah also. But winning the Las Vegas tournament I know helped us a lot, and coming from nowhere, so to speak, up to number 2, we were really pleased with it.
How much practice time do you have to put in to be ranked 2nd in the country?
Well, most of the people on the team probably bowl anywhere from 20 to 30 games a week. We do practice every Saturday out here.
Johnston and the others are hoping the old adage, practice makes perfect, holds true. A perfect season for the Senators means a national title. But first, AUM must get past one of 12 sectional tournaments. For the record, the national championship will be decided May 6th and 7th in St. Louis. That's not so far off in the minds of these young men. Dave Cody, WSFA TV Sports. Tuskegee's annual tournament attracts some of the best college baseball talent in the country, and Major League scouts with stopwatches in hand could be seen around Washington Field this afternoon. One player attracting a lot of attention was Larry Aaron, the son of baseball's all-time home run king, Hank Aaron. Larry plays center field for the Florida A&M Rattlers. The host Tuskegee team has a couple of potential pro prospects, but Coach Big Jim Martin remains cautious about his team's chances.
I think I have a real outstanding ball club. The only thing wrong with our team right now, we have a senior ball club, and we're playing about 4 freshmen in our starting lineup, and I think this will eventually hurt us during the course of the year.
Martin sees Tennessee State as a favorite to win the 3-day round-robin tournament. Florida A&M, another contender, looked impressive this afternoon against Mississippi Valley. Martin had some kind words for the Rattlers.
They have a senior ball club. I don't think that they are as strong as Tennessee State or Jackson State in terms of pitching. They have 3 or 4 guys that can really hit and run, and that's real important in winning college baseball.
A sun-drenched crowd witnessed today's first-round games. Expected good weather this weekend should make for an excellent tournament. The award ceremony is set for 5:30 Sunday afternoon. Dave Cody, WSFA TV Sports.
Naturally, I'm disappointed, but as I have said here before, there'll be some good that comes out of it, and perhaps I can help someone else. That's what I've done all my life. I think that my record will reveal that my entire life has been dedicated to helping others from the time I worked with the Department of Pensions and Security, helping the old people get their pensions, which was back in 1958, whenever Governor Folsom put in the old folks plan. I was there to help him with it, and I have, my record will reveal that I have done nothing but help the people and help this community since that time, since I have been in Montgomery, Alabama. I'm proud of my progress, and I'm proud of what I've done, and I think that my friends here gives me more support and shows that there are people in this community who knows that Juanita McDaniel is not a crook. That's all I have to say.
Are you going to do anything else about those misstated facts on your probation report?
I think that was tragic, uncalled for, and unnecessary, but sometimes you have to bear those things.
Feel somebody was out to get you? Do you feel like the...
Oh, was somebody out to get me? My dear, somebody has been out to get me ever since I've been in public office. This is just, they finally made it.
Do you have any names?
They will come later. That's all I have to say.